Hey guys, and welcome to Church Online. We are so excited that you are joining us today as we begin a brand new series and the Christmas season. If this is your first time checking in, or maybe you haven't watched in a long time, we'd love to invite you to fill out a Connect card. And the easiest way to do that is to text the word "What's Next" to 94000. A Connect card is the best way to get more information about how to get connected here at South Hills. If you have a prayer request, if you want to find a group to join, or if you just want to let us know your story and how our church has affected you, you can do all of that through the Connect card. Before we begin service, I wanted to let you know about a couple of exciting things we have coming up here at South Hills. Coming up on December 5th from 3 to 4:30 p.m., we have Jingle Jam. This is a great event for the whole family. You're going to want to come out and join us. Our family pastors have put in so much thought for this incredible holiday family experience, and we can't wait to see you there for it. Also coming up on December 9th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. is Dream 2021. Now, Dream, we are so excited for. This is an opportunity for us to celebrate you and all the ways that you gave to our church, whether that was with your resources or with your time. We're going to look back on all that God accomplished through South Hills this year, and we're going to take some time to dream about what we believe He wants to do in the coming year. And remember, for all of our events, you can RSVP for those on the Church Center app. Something else that we're going to be doing this month that we're super excited for is an Advent devotional. You can find that by going to southhills.org/Advent. There you're going to find a couple of different options for Advent devotionals that we'd love to invite you to follow along with. Advent is celebrated on the 4 Sundays before Christmas, and you can do either the ones for those Sundays, or you can actually do a daily one as well. We'd love to invite you to join us as we celebrate this season. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and enjoy the service.
The first Noel, the angels did say, was just certain poor shepherds in fields as they lay in fields where they lay keeping their sheep on a cold winter's night that was so deep. Noel, 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 Noel. Born is the King of Israel. Then they looked up and saw a star shining in the east, beyond them far, and to the earth it gave a great light. And so it continued both day and night. Noel, 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 Noel. Born is the King of Israel. Noel, 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 Noel. Born is the King of Israel.
Today we begin the season of Advent. Advent is an old tradition that's designed to get us to slow down and to reflect on the birth of Jesus through 4 words: hope, peace, joy, and love. Today, as we read a passage of scripture together, reflect on the word hope. Isaiah 9, 6, and 7. For a child is born to us, a son is given to us. The government will rest on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. His government and its peace will never end. He will rule with fairness and justice from the throne of his ancestor David for all eternity. The passionate commitment of the Lord of Heaven's armies will make this happen. Today, we're going to dive deeper into what that word hope means in context of the Christmas story and our lives. But before we do, I invite you to take a moment of silence to reflect on the word hope. What does hope mean to you?
The big story on this Friday morning is snowing in Corpus Christi and around the coast.
Well, happy Thanksgiving weekend. I hope you had an incredible Thanksgiving. I hope you ate way too much. Hopefully you are wearing stretchy pants as I'm talking right now, just with the expanded elastic waistband, just ready to grow with you over the course of this holiday season. But I thought because we are launching a brand new series today about the holidays and because it's Thanksgiving Day weekend, I thought it would be kind of fitting for us to kind of do a throwback sermon shoot right here in my kitchen as we begin to unpack during this series, Christmas at South Hills, the Advent season. And Advent is this idea of coming or awaiting. It's this anticipation of divinity meeting humanity and the two intermingling and the world evolving and things beginning to shift. And I think it shows us a picture of who God is and who we are and what the world has the potential to be if we trust Christ at the core of our lives. But I'm getting kind of ahead of myself. Today, we are going to jumpstart this series, which will take us all the way up till Christmas Eve. And I hope that you take some notes today. I hope you write some things down that stand out to you that you may want to share with somebody or that you just want to hang on to and remember and tuck into your own heart and echo to yourself throughout the week. And if you do happen to be taking notes today, the title of my message is Catalogue, Conspiracies. Now, it is, the Christmas season. And so even though so much is online these days, we still get catalogs. Like we still get stuff mailed to us. And we, as we bring in the mail, my kids always kind of look over my shoulder to inspect the pile of mail to see if there's anything for them. And this one particular day I was bringing in the mail and there were a couple catalogs in there. And one was like this clothing catalog. And I set it down and I left the room and I came back and I noticed that one of my kids was now like flipping through the catalog and kind of staring at the pictures and looking at it and looking kind of confused. And so I'm like, what are they seeing that I didn't see? And my son who's looking at this catalog is just like, this is not realistic. And I'm just kind of like, okay, yeah, how so? And I'm thinking maybe he's going to say something to the effect of like, everybody's thin and pretty in here. I thought this was going to be some sort of a fat joke aimed at me because COVID has not been kind. Okay, you guys. But that wasn't really where he was going with it at all. He held up a picture and they're all like laughing together and they're going out to get a Christmas tree. It was like this whole scene that had was unfolding inside of this catalog. And he was like, this isn't realistic. Like, no one's wearing masks. These people are too close together. Like, they're not distanced apart like they're supposed to be, right? Like, you can't have this many people over for dinner, okay? You're gonna have to sanitize all of the packages that they are bringing over to their friend's house, or maybe leave them on the porch for 3 or 4 days. And as he's looking at this thing, and we're kind of laughing at like his little observations, he's just like, who are these pictures for? Because they don't represent anything that feels at all like his life, like the life that we are currently living. And I wonder if there's anything in that resonates with you and where you're at this holiday season. I wonder if you've ever gotten this picture of what you maybe thought Christmas ought to be, only to be confronted with what your Christmas actually is. And there's such a discrepancy that it leaves you with the sense of disappointment. Like, you stare at the catalog cover or the Instagram picture or the movie scene, and you wonder, like, who are these pictures for? Like, when I look at all this, it looks amazing, it looks enticing, but it does not look like my life. And I think we're particularly sensitive to this around Christmas time, because I think we have this idea in our culture that, a good Christmas can fix anything, right? I mean, isn't that what like a lifetime of Christmas movies have taught us? Like, man, if we can just, no matter what's happened in the year, if we can just get the family together and we can get the lights just right and get the perfect tree, which you got to chop down in a forest somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and we'll bring it back on the top of the car, and we'll get the perfect gift for that perfect person that will submit in the relationship just the way we want it. And if we can do all these things, then maybe, just maybe, there's going to be enough magic in that Christmas moment to make this whole horrible year feel like it wasn't such a waste. And I wonder if you find yourself in that same frame of mind. And I also wonder if maybe you're starting to feel like, I don't know if that's going to work this year, because this is a different sort of thing altogether. But I don't think it's just a 2020 thing. I think the question that I want to pose to you is, like, did it really ever work? Like, did cultivating the picture perfect Christmas ever fix anything about your life? Or did it just throw like enough tinsel on top to distract you from dealing with it? I mean, at least this year, like, we can blame not having a good Christmas on like the governor or like the restrictions or the election or the lockdowns or like the economy. But regardless of whose fault you managed to make it, you and I are still ultimately faced with the same problem. It can be hard to let go of what could have been and find joy in what is. And I wonder if anybody else is wrestling with this right about now. Because the truth is, the more you build your hopes on things happening a certain way, the more discouraging it is when they don't. And the bigger the expectation, the bigger the devastation when it eventually goes unmet. Like, isn't it kind of weird? Because this can happen any time throughout the year, but isn't it weird, like how something not going the way you wanted it to on Christmas somehow feels way sadder than it would at any other time of year? Because we put so much hope in Christmas. But Christmas isn't always what we want it to be. And here's the problem with that. Hope is only as stable as what it's secured to. Like, if your hope is secured or attached to an ideal, meaning like a mental picture of the way things ought to be, and that ideal is shaken and things don't really work out that way, you end up feeling hopeless. And if you're honest, maybe you're there now. Like, for instance, like, if you put your hope in like a particular political party being in control of the White House or of Congress, right? Then you have hope, like, as long as things work out that way. But then when another party or another person gains control, you can start to feel hopeless and you have a meltdown, usually on Facebook. Like, if you put your hope in your relationship, this romance that you have feeling forever like it did in the beginning, that's great. I mean, while the honeymoon lasts. But what happens when life changes? Or maybe they change. Or maybe you change, but they don't change. Or maybe they hurt you or lie to you or leave you. If you put your hope in maybe your ability to add value in a particular way to like the place that you work or your family or your community, and that's great. as long as you can do those things or whatever that is for you. But like, what happens if you get sick or depressed, or maybe you just get older and you're not able to do what you used to do or to be who you used to be? What then? Then where's your hope? Now, maybe you're thinking like, yeah, I mean, as I'm listening to you rattle off those things, like half of them are true of my life right now, which is why I need Christmas to be awesome, okay? Like that you're making my case for me, which is great if it ends up being awesome in exactly all the ways that you were hoping it will be. But what if it's not? Like, I think some of us saddle Christmas with such high expectations that it can only ever disappoint us because it will never be able to deliver the depth of significance we're trying to squeeze out of it at the end of our year. And that's a desperate place to be in. So, Merry Christmas. Some of you that are tuning in for the first time are like, my friend told me this is going to be encouraging. I'm not feeling it right now. But honestly, we're just really getting started. And the thing I want to encourage you with is that we're not the first people to feel this way, to have these feelings, to secure our hopes to things that don't really go the distance, that sometimes leave us feeling hopeless. But there is a way forward. Now, I want us to look at this story that I think gives us some insight into that. And in just a few moments, we're going to be in the book of Matthew, one of the places that the classic Christmas story is told. But I want to give you some insight into the context of what's going on before we actually get to the verses themselves. Like when the classic Christmas story takes place, I'm talking about like the Mary and Joseph and Jesus in a manger one, like almost everyone in this story could have used a magical Christmas fix because so much about their world was broken. The people were living under martial law. There were soldiers everywhere watching their every move. Like people were overtaxed to the breaking point where they were starving. And of course, none of the money that was being taxed from them by the Roman government went to help the poor or the needy or the disenfranchised. It just went to help build a bigger army to expand the empire and pad the pockets of the already wealthy. There was all this fear and frustration and angst and aggression. There were so many restrictions that people had to live under, all these rules about what they could and couldn't do. The system was so clearly broken, and virtually everyone everywhere had an opinion about how to fix it, except for maybe like Mary, which is interesting and ironic that the story is about her, because Mary was a 13-year-old girl, which sounds way younger now than it did then because people lived a lot shorter lives and were ready to get married and establish a family at a much younger age. But Mary, like a lot of 13-year-old girls of her day, she probably didn't have a lot of grand plans about how to fix the government because she was preoccupied with like a different sort of picture. And she wanted to fall in love. She wanted to have babies. She wanted to raise respectable kids alongside of the friends that she grew up with. And she wanted to carve out a life for herself, which I think in a lot of ways is like a lot of us. Like in that, most of us don't want control of the world. We just want to feel in control of our world. Like we fantasize about getting, things in our orbit to finally be the way we want them to be. Like they're not there yet, but like we think, they could be. We think like, man, if I could just get my husband to do this. Like if my kids would just finally, if I could just lose these love handles, okay? Because they're not making me feel lovable. They're making me feel like this sweater doesn't fit, okay? And I just feel like if I could do these things, if I could make these things happen, everything would be perfect. And that promise of perfection, the way I picture it, that feels hopeful. But when we look at the reality of our lives and how far off our preferred picture often is, that gap in between, that discrepancy feels hopeless. And I want to just give you a definition so we're all on the same page when I'm using this word over and over again. Hopelessness at its core is this fear that tomorrow isn't going to be any better than today. And that's really upsetting when the way things are today is not great. Like when we're in a place where we're like, I don't like what's happening. I don't like how we are. I don't like how I am. I don't like how that thing is. And it feels like it is never going to change. And I don't want to live like this. This is not what I had in mind. I'm guessing that you have felt this feeling, especially during this insane season we're all living in. Hopelessness it's this feeling of being caught in this monotonous spiral where you are exhausted, but not getting anywhere. Like all of your efforts feel meaningless. You're pushing and striving and working, but it's not producing any of the results that you were expecting. And although we all experience it, it doesn't affect us all in the same way. For some of us, hopelessness looks like anger. Like we get mad, we go into attack mode, we tell people off. We're like, how come I'm the only one who gets it? Would you guys just fall in line and do what you're supposed to do? Which is, of course, what I want you to do, because I have a picture in my mind of the way the world ought to be, and it's not looking like that at the moment. For others of us, though, it doesn't look like anger. Hopelessness looks like depression. Like we sit around, we sulk, we listen to sad folk music in the dark, right? We think like, what is the use? I mean, who cares what I do or what kind of effort I put out or what sort of dreams I pursue, because nothing ever works out for me. So what's the point? And for others of us still, it looks like addiction. You know, we eat, we drink, we Netflix and chill, okay? Like we think like, if I can't control what I want to control, then I'll just control this. That gives me a sense that maybe, just maybe, I can make some part of my life into something that feels good right now. Like we all have our own mental picture of perfect, but none of us can ever really seem to ever get there because there is no there. Perfection is an illusion. And it leaves us wrestling with this question of like, how do I make things the way I need them to be in order to be happy? And anytime we think we've stumbled onto that path, we get this surge of hope. Like, this is how I'm going to achieve the picture I'm after. Like, I'm almost there. I can feel it. And I've got to imagine, like, when I read through the classic Christmas story, that Mary and Joseph, like, felt like they were getting close. I mean, the world wasn't perfect, but their little world was starting to get there. They had this plan. Like, they were just going to put their heads down. They were going to live this quiet life, raise a family, build a business together. They both had this idea of how they wanted things to be. They were happy. And then the Christmas story starts. Yeah, you heard that right. They were happy, and then the Christmas story starts. And this may not be how you remember it, but this is the way it actually happened. This is what it says in Matthew chapter 1, verse 18. This is how Jesus, the Messiah, was born. His mother, Mary, was engaged to be married to Joseph. All this sounds amazing so far. But before the marriage took place, while she was still a virgin, she became pregnant through the power of the Holy Spirit. And Joseph, to whom she was engaged, was a righteous man. He didn't want to disgrace her publicly, so he decided to break the engagement quietly. So nothing goes according to plan. Like, you and I, like we've heard this, so we know where the story is going, and we can see this intervention by God as a blessing, but to them, it would have been devastating. This quote unquote gift from God would require them to let go of all of their plans and follow him down a new path, which was frustrating. You know why? Because they really liked their plans. But now, a lot of those things weren't even going to be possible. And one of the reasons this story challenges me so much, even though I know it so well and I read it every year, is that if I'm honest, when things don't go my way, I don't assume God's doing something in me. I assume the enemy is doing something to me. Like, am I the only one that thinks this way? I mean, if I'm Joseph in this particular moment, I'm thinking like, there is no way God has anything to do with this. God is good. God blesses people. This isn't a blessing. This is a burden. Like God helps people. God gives them hope. This doesn't feel like hope. Hope would not hurt this bad. Hope wouldn't cost this much. Hope wouldn't require me to let go of all these things. And I wonder if you've ever thought that. Like God, I don't know if this is you, but if this is you, I just got to let you know, you are making everything worse. Okay, I had a plan. I had a picture of how things were supposed to be. In fact, I was pretty convinced that you gave me the picture I have about how things are supposed to be. But like, listen, if this thing isn't going to go the way I wanted it to be, then maybe I don't want it. This wasn't what I had in mind. Like, I see the picture that you're showing me, and I'm wondering, like, who is this picture for? Because this is not what I had in mind. And this is what we do. Like, we make plans based on our picture. But what if God's picture looks different than yours? Like, you know what I've found to be annoyingly true in my life? Not everything God does for my good feels that good. Don't you hate that? I wonder, like, could that be true for you too? What if this were true? Like, what if the devil isn't doing anything to you? What if God is trying to do something in you? You're just mad about what you know it's going to cost you. I guarantee you, Joseph was taking inventory of like everything that he was going to have to give up in order to go down this path. Like, this wasn't what he wanted. This wasn't what he pictured. In fact, like the scripture tells us this much. In verse 20, it says, as Joseph considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream. Joseph! I don't know what the angel's voice sounded like. I apologize. Joseph, son of David, the angel said, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child within her was conceived by the Holy Spirit. And she will have a son, and you're to name him Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. The angel's like, I know you're thinking about bailing right now, but what she's going through is from God. I know it doesn't feel good, but it's from God. I know it's hard for you to see this at this particular moment, but this is God's answer to your ultimate prayer. Like, you're going to have a son. You're going to raise this kid, and you're going to leave a legacy that really matters. And if you're Joseph, you're thinking like, I mean, kind of. But isn't this like what we don't like about the way God works? I think oftentimes like God gives us what we want, but in a way we never wanted it. Like in this story, these people, they asked for a baby and God gave them a pregnancy. Like they prayed for an end product. God gave them a painful process because this is how God moves. And I wonder what you might have to go through to get all God has for you. I wonder like if some of the pain you're going through is actually from God. Like I wonder if God is trying to bring about something new in you and you got excited about the promise of a baby, but you hadn't considered the pain of a pregnancy. And so now you're out in the middle of it and you're gritting your teeth and God's calling it a gift. That makes you feel frustrated. Like moms out there, like anyone who has been pregnant, like, let me just ask you this. Did it always feel like a gift? Every mom is rolling her eyes right now. Like, this is from the Lord. This right here. The morning sickness that's from the Lord. Okay, the back pain, the weight gain, the worry, the insecurity, the stretch marks, like the tiny little foot that keeps kicking my bladder and making me pee my pants at work, the unpredictable mood swings that make me so fun to be around. That right there, that's a gift from God. This is what birth requires. Like you asked for a baby, God gave you a pregnancy. And why does God do things this way? Because dreams don't come pre-built. Both Mary and Joseph had to choose to trust that God was doing something significant that they couldn't quite yet see. And ultimately, that's faith. Like faith is taking the next right step before you know the whole story. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. You may never know. Like Joseph, for his part of the story, right, he's told to stick with Mary, like to support her, to stand by her insane version of this story. Okay, so you're telling me impregnated by the Holy Spirit. Yeah, my friends are definitely not going to question that at all. Maybe you're thinking like, yeah, but like an angel told him, so that would have made it so much easier to just process and be okay with. Would it though? I mean, like, he would never really know what happened. I'm sure there were probably moments where like he'd be out and about and he'd see some guy across town and be like, I don't think Jesus is like, his hair is the same kind of, the way Jesus's jaw is a little bit like that. Where were you on the night? Right. There's always, if it was me, there would always be like a little bit of suspicion, a little bit of wonderment. But Joseph chooses to trust. I think the reality is like some of you are wasting your time trying to know the unknowables instead of working to honor God with your controllables. You think like, I'm going to get to the bottom of this with my internet research and I'm going to start a Facebook revolution of truth. But like, you may never get to the bottom of it. There are some things you may never know for sure. So the big question is, what is God calling you to do? Like right here, right now, in this place with these people, like what uncomfortable process is God asking you to step into so that you can gain access to everything that he has for you? I think like there's this common misconception that hope ought to feel like a Hallmark movie, right? That it ought to be all touchy-feely, but that's a lie. Hope is hard. You know what's easy? Cynicism is easy. Bitterness is easy. Anger is easy. Condescension is easy. Hope is hard, which is why I think not a lot of people choose to hold on to it. Because hope isn't the absence of hurt. It's the belief that there's something better on the other side of it. That like, if I walk through it, it's gonna be worth it. I have this picture in my phone. That's one of my favorite pictures I've ever taken. And it's of my wife, Gretchen. And before I show you this, you got to know that I got permission to show this picture because I know you're going to wonder, like, does she know that you're about to show this and you're about to tell these things? And she does. I'm not that stupid, okay? But there's this picture that I took of her, and it's right after she gave birth. And like you can see in the picture, she looks so exhausted, but she's also smiling. Like it's the most tired and most happy I think I've ever seen her at the same exact time. And when I look at this picture and when I look at that expression, I think to myself, that's hope. Because it wasn't easy. Like during her pregnancy, she was sick and she was anxious. Like we had to take all these tests to figure out if the baby was going to have these markers for these certain diseases that genetically run in our families. And there was a paranoia that came with it. She got gestational diabetes. Like we lived in this 2-story house and she got to a place where she had to just lay in bed and she couldn't walk up the stairs. And I had to deliver her everything. And if you know my wife, she hates being waited on. None of her clothes fit. She gained all this weight. She felt insecure. She got hemorrhoids. All of the moms out there, you know what I'm talking about. It comes with the package. She was tired all the time. Like her friends that she'd been friends with forever, like griped that she never made time for them anymore because all she cared about was the pregnancy. Meanwhile, she was bedridden. I'll tell you, like, neither Gretchen nor I, we didn't pray for any of that stuff. We asked for a baby and God gave us a pregnancy. We wanted the end product and God gave us this painful process. But I gotta tell you, it was worth it. The thing that we ended up with was what we wanted, but like the process we had to go through, it wasn't the way we wanted it. But we walked through it anyway, trusting that God would lead us through a season of growth to the place that we needed to be, to the thing that we ultimately longed for. What we ended up with wasn't the picture that either of us had in mind. but it ended up being a gift. And it wouldn't mean nearly as much if we didn't have to walk through all of that mess to get it. My wife complained so much throughout her whole pregnancy, which is completely fine. What's crazy is now she looks back and is like, I would love to be pregnant again. Which, I mean, if she's wanting that, she's gonna have to have an affair, because that's biologically not possible from this guy. But it's weird that she wants to go back to this painful season. Why is that? Because that was the path she had to walk down in order to get access to God's plan and his purpose for her life. There's something about that season that felt hopeful. There was this thing on the horizon that we knew if we walked through what we were in the midst of, there's something so much better on the other side. So let me ask you this. Like, what have you been secretly praying for? And what did God give you instead of that? And I wonder if the two are connected. Like, I get that what you got wasn't what you had in mind, but what if your ideal isn't real? What if it never was? What if what you pictured for yourself was a catalog cover someone shot pre-COVID in a fake forest? Like, who are those pictures even for? I get that you looked at it and you longed for it and you built a whole storyline around it, but like, that's not what your life looks like. And maybe that's a good thing. Like, maybe that's a gift. Like, maybe the picture you're trying to hold on to is way too small for what God really wants to do. So here's my sort of practical path to hide this truth in your heart, because maybe on the edge of this Christmas, you're struggling to hold on to hope. You're realizing that you have placed hope in things that can't sustain it. And I think this is what would help you to consistently put your hope in Jesus. Find a time every day to slow down and to pray, God, I'm thankful that I don't need blank to go my way to experience hope and happiness. I trust you to graciously give me whatever I need right now to grow. I get that maybe you're wondering, like, what goes in the blank? And I mean, you tell me, what goes in your blank? What's that thing that you need the picture to be perfect in order to feel happy, joyful, at peace, full of hope? What if you stopped hanging your hope on that? Like, what if you wrote this thing down and you put it on the dashboard of your car or on your bathroom mirror, or maybe you put it in your wallet? Maybe you tattooed it on your thigh. I mean, I don't, you can do a number of things with it, but what if you made this a consistent practice? I wonder how that would renew your mind, change the way you thought about what hope was really about. Like, what if every day when you felt this frustration or anger or depression rising up with you, what if you began to counteract it with this prayer, this acknowledgement of, like, God, I am so thankful that I don't need my kids to do everything I tell them to do when I tell them to do it. I don't need that to go my way to experience hope and happiness, because I trust you to graciously give me whatever I need to grow right now. Like, God, I am so thankful that I don't need this romantic relationship to be everything I saw in a movie. I don't need it all to go my way to experience hope and happiness, because I trust you to give me whatever I need right now to grow. God, I'm so grateful that I don't need the economy to go the way that I want it to go and to be everything that I think it should be to experience hope and happiness, because I trust you to graciously give me whatever I need right now to grow. There are a million things you could fill in the blank with, because I think that if you're sitting in a place of hopelessness right now, the reality of it is you're telling yourself the inverse of this statement. God, I need you to make this way right now so that I can feel hope and happiness. Part of what the Christmas story shows us is that when everything goes in a different direction than we thought, when the picture that we're handed was not the picture that we'd been envisioning, that we'd been dreaming about, When we begin to look around us at what we thought or hoped life was going to be like, and we start to wonder, like, who are these pictures for? The Christmas story is evidence that when things don't go according to my picture, they still might be completely on track with God's plan. And in fact, God may be writing a way bigger story than I was willing to settle for. Now, for the record, I do want your Christmas to be awesome, okay? I'm not like a Scrooge, all right? But more than that, I want your life to be awesome. Even if Christmas isn't, I want you to take the pressure off. Because the truth is, Christmas can't handle the full weight of your hope, but Christ can. And when we begin to believe that no matter what happens in life, when we look to Christ and we look for the lesson in the midst of that season or that circumstance, that God can be trusted to lead us through. And no matter how much it hurts in the moment, we can be hopeful that if we choose to walk through it with God, there's something better waiting on the other side. I wonder what would happen in your life, in your home, on your block, in your community, if you really began to believe this. I think it has the power to change everything. And that's what I want to pray into your life today. Would you just, wherever you are, maybe you are at home in your car, maybe you're in your kitchen like me, would you bow your head and let's just pray together that God would enable us to have the courage to follow him into hope. God, I'm so grateful for the life that you have given each one of us. God, this has been such an insane season of time. None of us asked for COVID. None of us asked for quarantine. None of us asked for the regulations and restrictions that we're all feeling the weight of. But there have been some things in life that we have asked you for. And God, I wonder if some of what we're walking through and experiencing right now is the pregnancy that precedes the baby. I wonder if some of what we are feeling right now is the pain of bringing something new to life. And God, I wonder if we began to ask the question of, God, what is the new thing that you are trying to do in and through me? If we might begin to see what we're having to walk through to get there a little bit differently. God, sometimes the road to hope is full of hurt. And I pray that you would help us to see past it and beyond it. God, I know there is so much heartbreak during this season of disruption where all of these things that we stacked so much hope on top of have kind of collapsed or fallen out from underneath us. And God, it has forced us to look to you. God, I pray that you would help us to take charge of what we can control and release everything else to you. Help us to take the next right step before we have clarity on where this whole thing is going. Help us to honor and serve and obey you with the life that we do have. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, today, if you prayed along as I was praying this prayer and there's something about it that felt more significant to you than normal, maybe you really haven't prayed in a long time. Maybe for you, there was this sense of sincerity of like, man, I really want to place my hope in something more stable than what I've attached it to in the past. And man, if you are ready to take some next steps towards Jesus, we want to help you with that process. And I know it sounds like big and audacious, or maybe it just sounds kind of like a theory, but how do you do this thing? That's what we want to help you with. And so here's what you can do to allow us to help you. You can text "What's next" to the number on the bottom of your screen, and a Connect card will be sent right back to your phone or your computer, or wherever you're texting from. And you can fill out just a very brief electronic form with a few pieces of information and some things that you have questions about or interest in. And one of our team members will follow up with you and help you take your next steps towards a relationship with God. Wherever you're at right now, we know God has more for you. We want to help you down that path. And the other thing I want to invite you to do with us today, everybody who happens to be watching right now, is to give with us. We believe in giving regular reminders to ourselves and the people we care about to do things that are important, but maybe aren't the easiest or aren't the most fun to do. We need a lot of encouragement when we're establishing new habits in life, and giving is one of those habits. It's one of those things that's really healthy for us to be generous with what God has given us. And it is your sustained giving that has kept our church being able to do ministry and impacting the lives of so many people in so many incredible ways. And I want to encourage you to just take a moment right now to give, whether that is through the text to give function, our website, the Church Center app, or whether you are filling out a check. But I want you to take a moment and do that right now. And as you do, I want to just give you a peek at a story that I find incredibly inspiring. It comes from our Costa Mesa campus. And it's a story of someone who, right in the midst of this huge quarantine COVID crisis that we're all experiencing, decided that she was going to take a next step. She was going to step out in faith, and she was going to begin tithing a percentage of her income to the church for the very first time. And she talks about why that made a difference and why she's glad she took that risk. Check this out.
So when I was little, I would go to church with my godmother, and I would always see her write a check for the donations to the church, and she would give it every week. And I felt like more if it was like a service or an obligation, kind of like you would tip a server. And I never really understood why, but I just knew she always did it. So the first time I heard about the word tithing was in South Hills. He had pretty much explained it as tithing isn't just giving, it's your relationship with God, it's molding your heart. He kind of illustrated it as this is your journey, not the church's journey. It's your personal journey with God. And that really, really connected with me. I had to think about it for over a year before I took the 10%. Because I gave like 1% or 3%. But the 10% felt like so much compared to the 1% I was giving. But when you take it away from the numbers, and you think about your relationship with God, it becomes a very small amount and becomes very minuscule as far as the energy you put towards God. The fear of my financial stability is on me solely. So if I did have a doubt, it was very short-lived because I understood that he was there, and he definitely made it a lot easier than I thought it was going to be, because I was definitely scared to jump, but I did it and it worked out. The more I gave the 10%, the more I felt closer and a better relationship with God. Like I'm wholeheartedly doing things instead of just like doing it because everybody else is doing it. It's more of God's giving me this ability to do this. I love giving every week, every Sunday, and I just feel amazing. South Hills is an amazing church and community, and I feel so blessed to have found it. What they do with my tithe, I just know that it's gonna be great. I think as a young kid and teenager, early 20s, you think, oh, this is my money. I worked really hard for this, and I do work hard, and I still do work hard, but I work hard knowing that I'm gonna still give back to God because He made it possible for me to have my career and touch all these hearts. It's just amazing. Honestly, you don't know what you're missing until you do it. It feels so good to tithe and to build your relationship and mold your heart with God. And you can always go back. You don't have to keep going forward. You can just try it and see if you can do it. And I 100%, I believe that anybody can do it. The more I give to God, whether it's tithing or time, the more I get. And it might not be in the same exact form, but it is definitely given to me. And God is definitely never gone back on His word of, loving us and giving us all we need.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. If something you heard today made you question what it would look like for you to say yes to Jesus, we would love to invite you to fill out a Connect card. You can do that by texting "What's Next" to 94000. We think that saying yes to Jesus is the most important decision you can make in your life, and our staff would love to reach out to you to resource you and to help you as you begin this journey. We also invite you to share today's message. You can do that on Facebook, YouTube, or Vimeo. You can also follow us on Instagram to get all the updates about everything happening here at South Hills. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We can't wait to see you at Jingle Jam or Dream. Make sure you head to the Church Center app to RSVP for those. We love you guys, and we'll see you next week.